Welcome back, everybody. We've got our first fireside chat here. The title is Leading Through Change, Growth Mindset and Continuous Learning. And we have three participants up here. First, we have Pia Elmegaard. She's the co-founder and managing director of GrowthTribe Denmark. You empower people to take the skills to stay relevant and adaptable in a fast-changing world. In the middle, Nanna Ulsøe, I'll try and pronounce that better next time, is founder of CanvasPlanner, a revolutionary method to organize and visualize work via a private and shared workboards. And across from me, Sahra-Josephine Hjort, co-founder, CEO of CanopyLAB. You help teams work smarter to solve complex problems. So this is our panel discussion for the next 25 minutes or so, fireside chat, and we're going to get to know you all just a little bit. First question is for you, Nanna. In my introduction, I talked about how many people didn't think they were going to be entrepreneurs, myself among them. You know, like I had to create a newspaper because I had no other opportunity. There was nothing else out there for me, so I had to create a newspaper. It was the same for you. I mean, you didn't have to be an entrepreneur. You never thought you were going to be an entrepreneur. You had a great job. You had everything laid out for you. So why sort of give it all up and go down and create this business?
Yeah, so after I did my master in London, I did get that job.
Yeah.
But I actually quite quickly realized that I was struggling a little bit when I met up at the office. There was just too many emails and too many meetings. And my competitive side, every time I was writing really fast on these emails and went to lunch, when I came back, the inbox was full again. And I thought it was so inefficient to work that way. So that was what basically made me start researching, like, how can we work smarter? How can we change this way of working? And I found out that a lot of it was just kind of the same. So there was space for an improvement, and that was what I decided to go for.
So tell me about the problem with some of the current tools out there. So why is it that you thought that there was a space for CanvasPlanner in itself? Like, what was out there, and what did you think needed to be created?
Yeah, so I have a background as a project manager, and a lot of the tools were made very linear, and a lot of them were also made by men. And I was like, okay, so I need to work in a different way, and there must be other people that like to be a little bit mixing methods and being a little bit more creative in the way that they're working and visualizing their work. So I couldn't find any tools that actually allowed you to do that. So that was where it started, the research, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And you told me that you actually managed to get some banks on a bidding war to actually invest in your business. So tell me about sort of how did you raise money for it in the first place? Yeah,
so of course I tried to pitch it and see if I could get an investor in quickly, but that didn't really work out. They didn't get the point of the business. So then I went with my savings and I borrowed a car and I drove to West Jutland, and actually I just talked to some banks out there, and they were like, oh my God, someone coming with an IT idea. Yeah. Let's be on it. So after one day of meetings, I had 3 different banks. I was negotiating the best terms, and we started up.
That's fantastic. I think that many people wouldn't even think to do that, right? They'd be in Copenhagen, they'd go to the banks, they'd say no. They'd be like, okay, well, so much for that idea, right? You got in the car, you went to Jutland, you found some people that were interested. That's a crazy story. I think, Sahra-Josephine, also talking to you, I also didn't get the feeling that creating a business was like exactly what you thought you wanted to do. You had a funny story that you were in St. Petersburg in the general consul, and you got in a fight with the general consul in St. Petersburg. Tell us about the story and what came out of that conflict.
Well, I think in general, I really didn't understand the way that they were working. I disagreed with their process. I thought there was a lot of nepotism in their hiring practices. And then a few weeks in, I remember we were in a heated argument about a piece of work, and then I called him an asshole, which you're not supposed to do to your boss. And I had just moved to Russia. But I think it was like there was so much tension, and actually getting that out there, it made me realize a lot about myself, about whom I wanted to work with. And then after I had finished in Russia, he pulled me aside and he said, Sarah, you're a lot like me, which I was quite offended by that statement because I didn't think I was like him. But he said, you'll never be able to work for anybody. You're going to have to set up something for yourself. And then I left Russia. I worked as a management consultant. And while I expanded my toolbox, I was profoundly unhappy while I was there. And actually, it took one of my brother's friends who had sat across from me for 2 years to come up. I met him outside of work by coincidence. And he said, you have not smiled for 2 years. And then I went home and then I quit that day.
Okay.
And then I started a PhD, and it was during that PhD I found the idea for CanopyLAB.
Okay. Yeah. So tell us, how did the PhD lead into CanopyLAB? What was the?
So I researched how labor migrants that come to Denmark use social media and learning tools to improve their social capital, and basically navigate work-related problems in Denmark. Okay. And in that research, I saw how learning technology was outdated, how the design was poor, how it lacked social components, and how a lot of the innovations we've seen around tech with Snapchat and Instagram and this like intuitive interface had not really been applied in that industry yet. So I saw an opportunity to upgrade the social relations, the community feeling, and the design. And then the idea was born first as a YouTube channel, and then later through the CBS Grow program, we conceptualized the actual idea about 5 years ago and launched it as a business.
Okay, fantastic. And how many employees do you have now?
We have 35.
Okay.
Most are working out of Peru and Colombia and Vietnam, and then there are 6 of us in Denmark.
That's fantastic. So actually GoGrow, which we have later on this today, so an alumnus. That's awesome. Yeah. So now on to you, Pia, because I think you're slightly different in terms of the fact that you not only are an entrepreneur, you help entrepreneurs. It seems like this whole entrepreneurship space is you. Or what? Tell us about that. Like, what brought you into the field in the first place? What attracted you?
Coincidence attracted me, I guess. I don't know. I was a student at CBS. I did my bachelor, I think, when I found this... when I got involved with this idea about having a niche media for startups and entrepreneurs. And I mean, startups back then, and I think this is like 2010, no one knew what a startup was, and none of the media companies were talking about startups, and technology wasn't like a rock star thing to work with. So it was a very small group of entrepreneurs and people interested in startups. Yeah. I just thought it was cool. I thought the media... just like writing about something going on that other people could learn from was just something that drew me, because instead of everyone doing their own thing, I thought, well, if we tell people about what someone else is doing and learning, then other people don't have to make the same mistakes, and that's great for everyone. So like that was kind of that was what drew me into it. And then that niche company or like blog ended up becoming an actual media company with people and you know, a lot of work hours, and then I ended up actually not finishing my master because I was doing that. Okay.
Well, I thought it was quite interesting what you said, that wouldn't it be great if people didn't have to make the same mistakes over and over again. We could learn from each other. I don't know. I think that there's like an old school feeling, which is like, if you could keep your competitors slower than you, right? Then you could go faster. So you're trying to say that it's not a zero-sum game.
Yeah. I was actually working as a research assistant at CBS at one of the departments where some of the people I was working with, they worked with network theory, and the old school traditional network theory is that the one who has the contacts has the power. So if you're in the position of connecting others, as long as you have that power to do that, you're still the one in control. And I just didn't believe that. I intuitively said, that can't be true, because if I connect to people, the idea is then they no longer need me, so I'm not in power anymore. But what I found to be true was, if I connect to people and they're relevant to each other and they get like something out of that, a job or business or whatever, knowledge, then both of these parties now know that they got that from me. So somehow that gave me great relationships, and like it just kind of strengthened my position. And I believe the same for companies and how companies can work. That if you kind of give people something of value, they'll value you in return. Yeah. So I just didn't really believe the old school kind of network theory idea about how to position yourself, and that's how I've been building communities across the Nordics for startups as well.
But do you think that the digital technology that enables this sort of this high level of collaboration, did it come first, or do you think that we're in a sort of a new time where this old competitive mindset, this network theory mindset is being laid by the wayside? We're moving into a more sort of collaborative. What do you think?
I don't know if I think like we moved away from it. I think a lot of people and companies are still very much caught up in the old school way of working, of keeping your contacts and your ideas close to heart. I think there's definitely a wave of something else. And I do believe that the ones working in a more forward-thinking, open way, they're definitely going to win on the long term, in my point of view.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we had Lisa Lotter on first. She's a futurist. She's talking about the future is coming, and we have to adapt to it, right? So the world is constantly changing, and we have to think about staying resilient to this change all the time, right? She talked about people who work for these companies for 20 years and they don't even know how to order a taxi, right? They're sort of on their own. Nanna, how do you stay resilient? How do you make sure that your company is constantly staying up to date with what's going on? What do you use? What are your tools to making sure that you're up to date and not going to be left behind?
I think, of course, like the research side of it, of course, is always there. Using your network whenever there's something new happening, we know. But I also think it's a mindset. It's having that interest in always being informed. I think that's what's driving it. And of course for your business, but also as a personal, like you really want to stay ahead of the game. And you only do that by putting yourself out there, getting exposed to new things and bringing in that into your work or your business.
Yeah.
So for me, it's much more mindset of wanting to be ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sahra-Josephine, what about you? What's your approach? Is it the same, just staying?
Well, I think that when we as an organization live from helping people improve their learning, then you have to do some of the same things yourself. So we have a diligent learning task force that ensures that we have a learning culture within CanopyLAB. And then we do some specific things. For example, we have something called AI Friday. And AI Friday is a concept where everyone watches something or sees something, reads a news article, watches a Netflix show, and they're inspired by something futurist, sci-fi, and then they come and they pitch the story. They haven't interpreted it yet, but they pitch the story, and then we collectively break it down. And then we're like, well, how does this story relate to learning? How does it relate to some of the features that we're building? And I think a famous example is that we watched the Be Right Back episode of Black Mirror. I'm sure some of you have seen it. And from that, we actually came up with the idea of a Lincoln bot, an AI chatbot that consumed all of the history courses on the CanopyLAB platform and could be your facilitator or guide. So that's a way we kind of keep our brain sharp. And another small thing we just introduced is a weekly show where I'm the host, where we only debate new technology and edtech. And then we are forced to, as a company, dump stories in the cloud that inspired us in the week, and then I'm the host and I get them just before, and then I use the immediate reactions on that. Yeah. So those are some of the tips and tricks we use in CanopyLAB.
You must know, Pia, you must be working with lots of different startups. You must have an enormous network. Are you seeing any trends in how startups are keeping themselves mobile and fresh and updated? What are you seeing?
I don't know if I feel like there's like certain things that are trending, but I do see more and more focus on learning as a capability for the company. Like you say, like just, obviously you're a company that works with learning, but still that you're focused on building a learning culture in your company. That's a new thing that is definitely growing. It's also something that we're seeing, so I run GrowthTribe in Denmark, but we're a European company and the headquarters is in Amsterdam. And we work with corporates and startups across Europe, and in hubs like Amsterdam and in London, a little bit in Paris as well, we see that L&D, learning and development, is something that is really growing. So they don't have digital transformation as like a thing in the companies anymore. They focus on L&D because continuous learning and building a self-learning organization is now the focus. We need to, from the bottom up, be able to equip our employees with a culture and a mindset and the resources so that they can learn the skills that they need today to do their work even better and to make better decisions on their own. Yeah. That's how you kind of have a better agile organization living. And it hasn't totally arrived in Denmark yet, but we're kind of seeing that the first moves towards this learning culture and a focus on learning and training.
Excellent. Nanna.
But that's also just what keeps you ahead of the game. Like it's the whole being open for taking in new information and actually also not be afraid of what we say, like make a pivot, like make adjustments in the product, in the business, in the mindsets, and in the culture internally. Yeah. I think
that was something that Lisa Lotter was also talking about, right? You got to be sort of flexible and not just and be brave enough to sort of go somewhere where nobody's gone before. I mean, do you think that young people are educated in this sort of? I think people are maybe are educated to take it a little bit safe, right? There are right answers, there are wrong answers. You take the right route, you try to get a 12. You go to university, you do this and that and the other. Do you think that there's enough focus on sort of thinking freshly, doing your own thing, being a little bit brave? Could we instill these ideas in younger people?
Can I?
Yeah.
I think so. What you learn in schools and like CBS and other places, the critical thinking part is great. Like you have to learn critical thinking, but I think the planning and the slides and the strategy part of like the school system or whatever you learn at school, maybe that's not like the greatest thing to learn. At least as an employer, what I'm looking for in people when I hire them, I look for execution skills. I look for, are you able to take this idea and test it? Are you able to do that on your own, or are you the type of person who like does 10 slides of ideas and like write down what you may think that someone could do or who you need to reach out to for help, or do you actually just go ahead and test it yourself? That's not something I feel like I learned in school, at least.
No, I can relate to that actually, because I didn't do great at school. I mean, I did okay, and I didn't do great at university either. But I was a photographer, and I was, I could code websites a little bit, and I could write a little bit, and I could basically do it all. And now I've got this job where I use all of it, right? And I never learned any of that stuff at university, and so I completely agree. Having these execution skills, practical things that you can actually, help and deliver on something. I can relate to that.
I think that sometimes. So I'm one of those people, obviously, that has loved going to school, because or else you don't pursue a PhD. And I'm actually have almost promised to go back on the side and do a postdoc as well. But I think that we've created an artificial inherent conflict between people that do well at school and they get 12, and then they're never going to be an entrepreneur, or there are these doers that reject the system and they jump out, and it's almost like a revolution. It's a rejection of the official system, and they jump out and become entrepreneurs. And I think we have to be a little bit careful of that, because I think that some of the most successful entrepreneurs we see today are people that started in their 40s, and they actually have gone through the official schooling system. So I think in the design of school, there has to be less focus on this uniformity of pushing people through to be the same and constantly delivering on time, instead of giving them that space to find out who they are. I'm one of those, we call it the 12 girls that went for the perfect grade all the way through, but I still had the courage and belief in myself to take a chance afterwards. So I think it's more about giving people the ability to take a creative pause in their studies if they want to do that, to pursue something else, or to break down barriers between, why do you still take an official degree? Why is it not all micro credentials where we put together and design our entire future? Why isn't it that everyone, dabs with entrepreneurship for some credit somewhere, even if they're going to be a nurse or going to be something else, because we need nurses and doctors and engineers and people work with everything to be the future entrepreneur.
Yeah, I also think that there's something in the education, like when I was young, I definitely thought I needed to learn the skills and then find a place to apply it. And what I've discovered is actually I've discovered things that I've been passionate about, and I'm like, okay, I need to learn how to be able to make a difference here, right? Instead of it goes the other way around, actually. And actually you can learn the school skills. So, but how do you find that passion? I mean, I think that's something maybe, so what's the, where does that come from for you, for example, when you're creating your company? Where did the really passion come from to go and study that PhD and be interested in that in the first place?
Well, I think for me, and I know actually that the three of us are quite passionate about this, like that the idea and the passion has to come first.
Yeah.
So building a business, entrepreneurship seems very glamorous. It's very tough. You have very, very tough days. It's constantly this up and down. So if you don't have that fundamental belief and passion about the idea, then it's never going to work out. So the idea to me has to come first, because those dark nights where you don't know if you're going to make it or not, and they're going to be there a lot in the beginning, if you're not passionate about it, you don't become a unicorn overnight. Most of us don't even want to be a unicorn anymore. So it has to be about finding pleasure in everyday situations, about being patient, of observing growth, and being fundamentally happy on the journey, and not just like moving towards this destination. So for me, it was a fundamental desire to help basically make people's lives better. A lot of people were generous with their time in my research, and I saw a serious problem that they had that I felt like I could do something about, and that's where the desire came from.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, Nanna, that was the same for you, right? You found this passion because you were like, hey, why? You worked in these companies, and you're like, this is ridiculous. Like, why are we still doing it this way? So there are these opportunities all around us if we start listening to this voice inside of ourselves when we sort of notice something. Is that what it's all about? That like, ding, 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 ding. This could be done differently, or what?
You didn't really have a choice, did you? I mean, it's not like you started listening to the voice. It's more like your voice was so fucking loud that you had to do something about it. Like you had to say you're an asshole, and you had to go do your thing and like.
But I worked in China and the US and south of Europe first, so I got some experience as well. And there I had freedom to be my own boss. So whenever I entered into this big corporate company, there wasn't really any space for changing and improving stuff. And whenever I had that voice in my head, that almost made me cry when I was bicycling home from work because I hated it so badly. Yeah. Yes, I quit as well. But it was because I believed that there was something that could be changed and it could be done better. And being really strong in that is the drive you need to survive the nights whenever it's tough.
So we're talking about listening to yourself, listen to that ding, 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 thinking that you can do it, being a little bit brave, going your own way. But I mean, I tell you what, I'm not going to start a new company anytime soon. I'm actually very happy to work at the University of Copenhagen and have some normal working hours and work for this organization that I believe in. Maybe that's going to suit me quite well. I mean, do you think it's actually realistic or the right way to go for everybody to think about starting a business? Pia, what are your thoughts about that?
No, it's not right for everyone. I think it's very much a lifestyle choice as well. I mean, it's exactly like you say, Sahra-Josephine. It's not about where you want to go. It's about what kind of process you want. Also, getting back to learning and that learning journey, we talk about it in school, but I mean, my learning journey is way steeper after school. Not because I loved school as well, and I actually thought I was going to do the PhD thing as well. It just kind of turned out differently, but I loved school. I loved learning, which is also why I'm doing what I'm doing today. I'm still learning something every day. I would never be happy in a position where I wasn't really learning something new every day. And I am right now, and I will continue to do that in 10 years' time. That's not for everyone. No. I mean, I have lots of friends who have different kinds of jobs where they're quite happy with not learning too much new things at work for a couple of years, because they're learning something else at that point. Like, I have a really good friend who taught herself how to bake, like really bake. Like, can't even, real cakes. I don't know. It's like, it's super hard. It's very complex. I can't even make like a regular kind of cake. And she used all of her energy and resources learning something outside of her job. That's for some people. I'm happy at work if I put all of my resources and energy into my work life of learning and developing myself. Other people do it with like sports and other stuff.
But I also think it gives you a chance to have an impact, which this is at least something that really drives me, because yes, we can learn, we can create the setting so we can learn when we are being challenged. So it is a steep learning curve when you choose to become an entrepreneur. But it's also a place where you can make decisions and you can take actions fast and actually create that impact. So I don't think it's for everyone to say, like, I agree with Pia, but I do think that if you have that, like, if you really want to do that in life, then I think becoming an entrepreneur is a great way.
So let's say we've got somebody who's like kind of on the fence, right? So they're crying on their way home from work on their bicycle, and they're thinking, oh, this could be done so much better. And yet they're like, I don't know. I kind of have an idea. Maybe I could do this, but do I want to take the leap? And what do they consider? What are the questions that they should be asking themselves to sort of decide how to move that dial?
Well, I think I don't want to speak on behalf of all of us, but I think we probably represent that end of the spectrum that's a little bit extreme, that we just like kind of jumped out and figured out to swim with it. But I think for me, I guess it's not a very feminist statement, but of course I went home and I talked to my husband and I said, I'm fundamentally unhappy and I have to quit. I have to quit now. So if I am not employable ever again, are you going to support me? So I'll figure out what to do. And he said, sure, because, you know, he knows I'm one of those people, just like you're saying, I live at work. And I cannot have a job where I don't respect what I'm doing. I don't respect the ideas and the tasks and fundamentally the impact that we're having. So he knew that I would be a miserable person to be around. But I figured out those things like, you know, what am I going to do? So for example, for me, I had a salary with my PhD for a significant amount of time, and that ensured I could still have that life that I wanted. So figure out, are you willing to live on a couch? Yes or no? If it's a no, you have to have a financial plan. Do you have savings? Can you take out a loan? You know, have you tested the validity of your idea? Like what is, and of course, like probabilities are impossible. But I can say with the Go Grow program, I think there were like 16 of us and I think there's 2 of us left. So, you know, like 9 out of 10 will not make it. So how much do you feel about it? And if you're crying at work, you should be quitting no matter what. We have a social security system in Denmark. Apply for another job. But figure out if you want to be, you know, do you want to be an entrepreneur? You know, this the side hustle is one of the most popular. I think it's like almost in the dictionary now. Side hustle is a huge thing. Dip your toes, figure out if you like it, or do like us and just like jump in, but you know, have some sort of.
Okay, so that you could ease your way into it.
Lots of people
right?
ease their way into their entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've only got a couple of minutes left. So, Nanna, I think you would just a little bit first.
But I think it's actually super smart to do it like that. So you have some experience on the side, you're secured financially, but you're also expanding your network when you're working and getting new ideas, right? While you're building it, because it always takes longer than you think. And it's not just the tech companies. It always takes longer. Multiply it with pi or something. In terms of how long it takes and how much money. So, I think it's really smart too.
So the creeper, you had a point you wanted to jump in there?
Just that I mean, a lot of people come to me, and I'm sure they come to you as well, with the dreams. Like when people come to people like us, it's because they have this idea about maybe entrepreneurship. And I very rarely meet people that have that dream that shouldn't just go ahead and test it out. Like, dude, what's the worst that can happen? Get a job afterwards. You live in Denmark. I mean, and if you know you have these ideas and you're driven and you're strong enough to take that chance, you're definitely strong enough to get a job afterwards. That's what we did, my husband and I. We kind of looked at each other and said, well, you know, what's the biggest fail that we can have? He's also an entrepreneur. So it's like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, that we have to take a job. Ooh. You know, well, I guess I'll survive that, you know.
Absolutely. Okay, so in this last, so we've got about a minute. Quick, what's the biggest myth about being an entrepreneur that you've heard, that you've now experienced? What's the biggest myth?
That it equals total freedom and happiness.
Okay.
That's definitely not true. It requires hard work, planning, and then happiness.
Yeah. Nanna, what about you? Do you have a myth that you've busted, or is it all true? You have to work 60 hours a week, and you know like.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah. You have to work 80 hours to succeed. No, it's
not true, right?
It's not true.
Okay.
It's not true. No. Actually, that it's equal for everyone to get into entrepreneurship. Yeah. I don't think it is that.
No.
So, no.
You think there's some people have bigger barriers than others?
Yeah.
That they've got
stepping
to
into entrepreneurship. Yeah.
Okay, and just quickly, what were those sorts of barriers we're talking about? It's just whether you got a family and you got financial support, and
and also getting finance, like investment in the companies, and getting tapping into network. Like it all depends on age, experience, gender.
So it's different. It's going to be different for everybody. Well, we're in the last 20 seconds, and I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. We're not going to go over time. I think we've come all the way around, having a learning mindset, figuring out how you're, whether or not it's something for you, and actually really, why not? Actually, like what's the worst thing that could happen? Get a job, right? So we're off now. We're going to see you off in about 5 minutes. Okay, take care.